As a female photographer in the 21st century, I had the privilege of experiencing the struggles and joys of owning my own photography business. There will always be gender differences, but I cannot imagine trying to make it as a businesswoman in the early days of photography, as women of that time faced many challenges unknown to women today. What names come to mind when you think of the early camera period? Names like Louis Daguerre, Joseph Niepce, or William Talbot? These are three of the most recognized names from that period. These famous men invented and were the face of the beginning of photography in the early 1940s, and these men remained dominant in the field of photography for a long time after that. According to art historian Gail Clemens, in 1851 there were 50 male photographer studios and only one female photographer studio in Britain. Women go from being only 2% of the total business photographers to 42% in the next 60 years, but not without struggle. Many women freelance photographers dedicated their whole life to their work and had to give up everything else to pursue their passion. Originally, women did not just go out and buy a camera in a world dominated by men. Early women photographers were only a part of photography because of their husbands or close family friends. Constance Talbot, wife of William Henry Talbot, is believed to be the first woman to have taken a photograph of a few lines of a poem using sunlight. According to Mauve Kennedy in a 2012 article in The Guardian, Constance was as interested in photography as her husband, and she was constantly by his side watching, learning, and doing some experimenting of her own. Women were thought to not be capable of understanding the science of early photography and were dismissed from the profession until Talbot explained the cyanotype process to a friend. Botanist Anna Atkins then made cyanotype photographs of dried algae according to Sun Garden's Victorian Photograms, a book of her own photograms published in 1985. These women were not average, though. The average woman in that time was supposed to be in the kitchen or taking care of the kids without extra time for things like using cameras. This was true up until Kodak started advertising to women and making it easier for women to use cameras. Instead of using giant camera obscuras, they produced smaller and simpler cameras that women were able to use and handle in an everyday setting. Women of that time started photographing their children and normal things around the house because they were still obligated to raise their children and be that perfect housewife. Some women had more freedom and started taking their Kodak cameras to the beach and on vacations with them. Kodak's smaller rolls of film and system of sending film back to Kodak to develop made the developing process much easier. Women did not have to have a vast scientific understanding to be able to take pictures anymore. Kodak even advertised with the Kodak Girl as an appeal to women and what they were capable of. Some of the earliest women to use a camera were Frances Johnston and Alice Austin. Frances Johnston was a friend of George Eastman, founder of Kodak, in 1888. Eastman gave Johnston her first Kodak camera when she was younger, and she went on to study photography from Thomas Smiley. She started out in photojournalism and was then accepted to the Washington Society to photograph rich social events. She photographed the Roosevelt children, Mark Twain, and other iconic figures. She still had a passion for news and used her writing talent to further that while photographing the White House. She paved the way for women to enter into what was previously known as a man's world. She smoked cigarettes like men and was bold and fierce with her words as well. Like Johnston, Alice Austin received a camera and had some training by her uncle who saw her potential. By the age of 17, she was as good as an experienced photographer. Her backdrops consisted mostly of her home, but she also enjoyed nature scenes and did some traveling as well. Women like Alice Austin were beginning to travel and become members of the society. In 1888, Anna Huas joined the board of the Photographic Society as the first woman to be introduced into the Photographic Club. In a world that was previously all men, women were becoming known as members. The Novell sisters held exhibitions in the London Photographic Society in 1854. Lady Hawarden won silver medals at the Photographic Society exhibitions in 1863 and 1864. Alwina Gossor was one of the first professional photographers in Switzerland at the time. The Grenade Art Society was founded in the early 1900s and was an all-women's society. All of these women pioneered positions in the realm of men, and they opened the doors for more women to come along after them, in which a number of women soon followed. Some of the most famous women in the realm of photographic history were Julia Cameron, Dorothea Lange, and Sally Mann. Julia Cameron didn't receive a camera until she was in her late 40s in 1863, yet she went on to become a professional within only 18 months. She had established a studio in 2 rooms in the Victoria and Albert Museum, as well as having sold over 80 prints to them. She wasn't interested in commercial studio photography as most were in that time. She dressed her friends and family up for her unfinished and informally posed portraits. She would dress the baby up as Christ, her maid up as Madonna, or her husband up as Merlin. With the underlying theme of spirituality and classical literary figures, she worked hard and pushed her models even harder. Not everyone liked her photographs, but she has earned something for her originality. Another hardworking and original photographer is Dorothea Lange. She dedicated much of her life to her career, traveling all over the country and abandoning her family to pursue her assignments. Most known for her photo, Migrant Mother, she photographed the West in documentary-style photographs that showed the impact of the Great Depression. She was also known for her work in the Farm Security Administration in the 1930s, and her inclusion of quotes with her photographs throughout her work. The photographer who did not need words with her photograph was Sally Mann. Her controversial photographs revolved around children's innocence, uncovered sexuality, and gruesome death. Her children and family were her main subject during her early years, and she published their black and white portraits, Immediate Family, in the gallery in New York. Her photographs were seen as controversial because they often featured her children nude in everyday environments. After an escaped convict was shot on her property, she worked with coroners and forensic teams for several years and photographed a series of decaying bodies for one of her shows. Finally, in her later years, she photographed her husband's struggle with an illness and their marriage together. She dedicated her whole life to photography, and her work shows it. All of these women gave everything they had to their work and paved the way for photographers like me to do the same. It is hard in today's culture where everyone and their mother has a device with a camera, but if I can pursue my camera abilities with the same determination that the women throughout the history of photography have, then I will definitely have a shot to make my impact. If I can remember to pursue my own style, even when it's not what others like, and to pursue it wholeheartedly, then I will go far. In the 21st century, I had the privilege of pursuing my goals as a photographer and can attend school for these goals. Without the hard work that these women before me put in, I may not be able to do so.